All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. Again, welcome to the webinar today. Today's webinar is going to be covering, why companies using Sage 100 are switching to Sage Intacct and covering kind of some of the differences between the module or the two products and um, kind of discuss that a little bit further. On the call today, my name is Joe Gupser. I am the partner of the Sage Software Division here at Martin and Associates, and on the call with me is Brett Penzinger. He's the director of our Sage Software practice here. And there's our contact information. I know between Brett and I, we probably know the majority of the people on this call, but just if you need to get hold of us, there's our information. The couple quick housekeeping things here as we're getting started. The webinar is being recorded, and when the webinar is over, you will receive a link to the recording that you can, if you want to, go back and look at anything later, or if you want to have somebody else from your office look at it or watch it later, so it'll be out there or sent to you guys. Also, if any questions come up during the webinar, please use either the Q&A portion or the chat feature to send them in, and we'll get them answered at the end of the webinar. Here's a quick agenda of what we're going to kind of cover today. I got a quick PowerPoint up front, and we're going to dive right into the product. So we're going to do an introduction to Sage Intacct. We'll do some comparison to Sage 100. We'll talk about what the user types that are available inside of Intacct, talk a little bit about Intacct Learning, the dimensions and dashboards and reporting options. We're going to cover workflow approvals. And then we'll cover some of the the automation features that are available inside of the accounts payable, the bank reconciliation / cash management module, and the AR module as well. So introduction on Sage Intacct here. So it's what's referred to as a born in the cloud solution. What that means is the product was written to be cloud-based from day one. So the first line of code on it was intended to be a cloud-based product. It was founded in 1999. Very reliable product. It's got a 99.8% uptime commitment. They do all other things for you like automatic backups and all that good stuff. And we'll get into some of those here in a little bit to kind of talk about some of the things that Intacct offers. It's got a fresh and modern user interface because it's accessed through a web browser since it's a cloud-based hosted ERP. And the benefit of that as well is, you can pretty much hit your accounting ERP package from anywhere at any time as long as you have a web browser and an internet connection. We're going to get into the concept of dimensional accounting and talk about that in a little more detail later on. Talk about dashboards. It's multi right out of the box. So what that means is it has multi-entity capabilities built right into it. Multi-bin built right into it if you have inventory. Multi-currency built right into it if you have the need for multiple currencies. It's got workflow approval process throughout the system. Automatic upgrades for new releases a year. We're going to get into more details on some of these as we go. It's referred to as a best of breed product, which means it has easy integrations to other solutions. We'll talk about what that means. And basically, the product was designed for accounting professionals, CFOs, your finance teams, your accounting teams. So it's a very powerful financial solution to give you the information you need to kind of run the business. The last bullet there is a pretty good thing, a pretty good endorsement. So they're chosen as the first and only preferred financial management software by the AICPA. Quick little timeline about Intacct here. So it was founded in 1999. Here's in 2009 is when it got the endorsement from AICPA. 2017 was a really big year in Intacct. That is when Sage Software actually purchased the product. And from 2017 through now and continuing into the future, Sage has put a lot of investment dollars and will continue to put a lot of investment dollars into the product to really flesh it out and make it a really strong, viable product out there in the market. Always ranks really well. Always number one or towards the top in customer satisfaction surveys year after year. I mentioned that it was a best in breed product. So there's a Sage Intacct marketplace out there for add-on products if you want to do things like um, certain purchasing things or budgeting and planning or EDI or document managing. If you don't want to use the built-in, if they have it and you want to add one on that you're using, there's a marketplace out there for a lot of these products, showing you what can be added and implemented and integrated. Sage 100 versus Sage Intacct comparison here. Let's talk about the deployment model first. So this is talking about where the program resides. So Sage 100 is an on-premise system that requires a dedicated server. So that server has to either be a server that you own that sits in your office, or a server that you're having hosted somewhere, but you have to have a physical server for it to be installed on. And each client that will be accessing Sage 100 has to have a workstation installed on that machine in order to access Sage 100. Sage Intacct, as I mentioned before, is a cloud-based system. So as a result, there's not a need for any dedicated servers. And because it's all hosted online for you on Sage provided servers out there, all comes part of your subscription. And as I mentioned before, as an end user, you access Sage Intacct through a web browser. And since this is access to a web browser, there's not usually as big a need on the accounting side of having beefed up laptops and PCs and things of that nature. But also because it's web driven, as long as you have a browser, you can access it from laptops, PCs, tablets, phones, wherever you want to access it from. Let's talk about the software update frequency. So Sage 100 releases a new version annually of the product, and then they release individual product updates for fixes throughout the year for that version. Those updates, new versions, product updates, all have to be manually installed on your Sage 100, so it requires planning. There's some downtime of getting it installed, testing, all that kind of stuff, and there's cost involved with that because there's labor time in terms of having to apply those updates and upgrades. Sage Intacct has quarterly new feature updates that get released. So they're quarterly, so 4 times a year. They automatically get applied. So there is no cost for upgrades. There is no downtime. They'll get installed overnight, and you'll just come in the next day and be on the next version, and you really won't even know it, other than maybe seeing some new features out there or whatnot. But no downtime to your company, and no cost as well for the updates. Multi-entity. Sage 100 companies are independent of each other. They're like individual silos of data, and as a result, each of the companies has to maintain their own list of chart of accounts, vendors, customers, items, terms codes, you name it, are all maintained individually in each company. Sage Intacct uses what's called a top level that sits above all of your individual companies. It's not a company in and of itself, but it's where you can set up and share across all your entities a chart of accounts, a list of vendors, a list of customers, list of items, on down the line. They all get set up at the top level and then get used across all the companies. So big efficiency there, because, if you need to add a new vendor and you have 2-3 companies, you've got to go into each company and add that. Where in Intacct, you add at the top level, boom, it's ready to go across all of your entities. You can restrict customers, items, vendors down to individual entities or a group of entities if you wanted to in Intacct. If that vendor or customer shouldn't apply to a certain entity, you can restrict that. Chart of accounts. Sage 100 uses the concept of natural or main accounts and then account segments. And you have to create a GL account for each combination of natural account and sub accounts that you want to post to. So your chart of accounts can get pretty big pretty quickly in that situation if you have a lot of sub accounts. Sage Intacct uses the concept of natural accounts and dimensions. Dimensions replace your sub accounts, and you use these dimensions to tag transactions inside of Sage Intacct. So you only have the need to create a chart of accounts for your main accounts. You set up your dimensions independently, and then you use those dimensions to tag your transactions. That helps, to to kind of helps in your analysis and reporting and dashboarding. And we're going to see all this in action here in a little bit. Transaction updates. So when you put data into Sage 100 versus when you put data into Sage Intacct. So Sage 100 is a batch-driven system, which means when you enter in general journal entries, cash receipts, AP invoices, on down the line, they go into a batch. You then run a register, then they update to your live data. In Sage Intacct, it's not batch driven. So when you post a transaction, it's not writing it to a batch, it's posting it out in the system at that time. You still have the ability, based on your user rights and whatnot, to go out and edit that transaction, reclass transaction if you hit the wrong dimensions and whatnot, based on timing and the rights of the user. But it's a real-time update system to give you more real-time accurate data for reporting. Some additional comparisons through some automation and built-in efficiencies. Sage Intacct helps shorten your month-end close cycles, and it lets you kind of focus more on analysis and planning related items. Multi-company general ledger. Sage Intacct has this built in as part of the product. So you can make journal entries across multiple accounts and hit your appropriate due tos and due froms. You need a third-party add-on for that for 100. Multi-company AP, out of the box, Sage Intacct. You can have an invoice that gets split across expenses for multiple companies or entities. And then when that bill gets paid, the cash is going to come out of whatever entity you ran it from, and it hits the appropriate due tos and due froms based on the lines to get your intercompany postings. AP requires a third-party add-on. If you are a company that requires multiple or multi-currency, that is available natively inside of Sage Intacct. Sage 100 requires an add-on. Employee expense entry. If you want your employees to enter in their expense reports and you submit receipts and you want to run expense checks through the system, you can do all that natively inside of Sage Intacct, where Sage 100 requires an add-on to do that. Workflow approvals is all built into Intacct, requires third-party add-ons to do that inside of 100. And we're going to get more in depth in that here in a little bit. Sage Intacct has a native fixed assets module that's fully integrated. It just shows up as a module in the menus. It integrates right in with your AP, where you can create assets right from your AP and all that good stuff. And then last little difference here is Sage Intacct has an open application programming interface, or API, for doing some integrations, where that's not necessarily the case inside of Sage 100. Sage Intacct has some more additional things here real quick. Sage Intacct has a robust set of dashboards out of the box that you can use with the product. You also have the ability to create and maintain existing dashboards. This is not available inside of Sage 100. Their dashboarding is very limited and very archaic in nature. From the Sage Intacct dashboards, you can drill all the way down to underlying individual transactions from higher level on the dashboards if you keep drilling down. And we're going to look at dashboards here. We talked about the Sage Intacct Marketplace for third-party integrations. This is another nice thing about Intacct, the third bullet there. Attachments can be added to transactions, to master file records, through a drag and a drop right onto a record, where in Sage 100, if you wanted to do something like that, you'd have to use the memo feature and create a memo and then put the attachment on that. And you got to have a shared directory set up. And so it's not as easy to do that. Intacct allows for the ability to do AP automation, AP payment automation, automatic bank feeds, AR automation. And there's a collaborate tool we're going to see that helps in your communication inside of the product inside of Sage 100 for your ERP users. There's a Sage Intacct Learning available as well for on-demand training classes. This helps to get Sage Intacct users engaged, and it also helps to kind of reduce the cost of go lives if you are converting over to Intacct, because your users can be doing a lot of some self-training stuff while the implementation is going on. That helps reduce the training costs when we do go live. It's a cloud-based training, so you can access it from anywhere at any time, just like the product, and you can access it as many times as needed. User types, there's a business user that is an unlimited user in the system. They can go into anything in the system, but they can be restricted down based on permissions assigned to them by the administrator. There's an employee user, which is a limited access user. They can go to dashboards and reports. They can view vendors and things of that nature. But they can't really add or change any of that kind of stuff. The only thing they have the ability to enter are they can enter, approve expense reports, staff expenses, timesheets, purchasing requisitions. They can also be a part of any of the approval processes as well. There's a project manager user license available if you have the projects module. It does everything that an employee user does, plus gives you some additional features on the projects. And there's a warehouse user available as well. Again, same as what the employee user has, but it gives you some additional features inside of the distribution modules inside of Intacct. Dimensions. So as I mentioned, dimensions replace your sub accounts. There's a series of predefined dimensions that come with the product, and you could add user-defined dimensions as well if there's additional data that you want to track. So your dimensions are things like your customer number, your vendor number, your employees, your locations, departments, classes, items. These all come with the Intacct system standard. The warehouse dimension comes if you own the inventory module. The projects dimension comes if you have the projects module. The contracts dimension comes if you have the contracts module. Okay. And then if you have additional data outside of these that you want to track, you can do add-on user-defined dimensions as well. You can also rename some of these dimensions to be more of what you call them, and I'll show you how that works here in a little bit. Here's a quick example. So we have a legacy approach to a chart of accounts. We have one account, the 1500 account, and this company has 3 segments: a location, a department, and a project. And here's the values for each of those. In a legacy system like Sage 100, to create every possible combination of location, department, and project for this one account, you're creating 75 different accounts out in your chart of accounts. Where in Intacct, this is one account, and you have the locations, department, and project set up as dimensions, and you just tag your transactions to New York, engineering, project 1, for instance. So it just helps streamline your chart of accounts and your reporting. So here's an example of more of a modern chart of accounts like Sage Intacct has. You have your natural accounts plus your dimensions, gives you a shorter, easier to manage chart of accounts, helps your reporting more easier, improved user interface or user experience. And then this is some examples of just dimensions in action. We're going to see all this when we get into the system. The reporting options available inside of Intacct. There are standard reports that come with the system. These are built right into the system. It can be pre-configured. Users can't really change these reports, but you have the ability to make slight modifications to them where you can change some of the filtering and selecting and formatting and whatnot. Financial reports. There's a series of financial reports that come with the general ledger module. There are standard financial reports that are available through the Quick Start library. You can use these. You can modify these. You can also create your own reports using the financial report writer. Custom reports can be created using either the custom report writer or the interactive custom report writer. The custom report writer comes with the core Sage Intacct subscription, and it's a wizard-based tool that walks you through report creation. If you have more robust or more complex needs for reporting, you can add on what's called the interactive or the ICRW report writer to do your more complex reporting capabilities. So workflow approvals built right into Sage Intacct. So what this is where you put in a transaction and it doesn't post right away, but it is routed through an approval process that you determine as a company before that transaction actually gets approved and entered. And we're going to see this in action, but it can be used on general journal entries, vendors, AP bills, AP payments, your purchasing transactions, your expense reports, your expense report reimbursements, and timesheets. And the approval functionality on these can be either value-based, manager-based, user-based. There's different ways that you can set up the approval process. Let's talk about a little bit of automation, and then we're going to kind of wrap it up here and get into the demo. So AP bill automation is available, and that's used to import bills into your Sage Intacct system from a template. The bills can either be uploaded or received via email. And AP bill automation uses Sage AI to automatically pull data out of that PDF, for instance, that you have, right? And it learns and identifies the vendors, the amounts, the dates, the line items, and it will create draft versions of bills out there for you that you can then go out and look at. It might not get everything when you first start using it because it's learning, but it's a machine learning. So as you go out and you fill in the missing data for the draft that it created, it learns that. And over time, it starts knowing how to fill in that missing data based on the way you answer certain things. There's also automation on the payment side. It's powered by CSI, which is a Sage Intacct supported company. Payments are initiated inside of Intacct. CSI works with your vendors to determine what their preferred payment method is. And then once you initiate the payments, CSI takes over and they issue the actual payments to the vendor using their preferred payment method of either check, ACH, virtual card, so on and so forth. Bank reconciliation in the cash management module. You want to get a list of cleared checks or cleared deposits and interest fees, all that kind of stuff. You can get a CSV file from your bank and import that in, and out of the box, Intacct supports thousands of banks in that format. Or you can turn on bank feeds, and bank feeds are a direct connection to your bank. And then you set up matching rules. So real-time data is coming in from your bank as checks clear, deposits clear, all that. And it automatically pulls that stuff into Intacct, tries to match it up against transactions you have in the system already, and clear them. In discrepancies it finds, it will report them and let you know we can't find this type stuff. But if it has things like interest or fees or things that you haven't already accounted for inside of Sage 100, it'll automatically create the payments or journal entries for you for those that you can then look at and say, yep, those look good. Now you have it in both the banking side and in Intacct as well. AR automation. This is there's two parts of this. There's a back end side of it that your collection teams can use, and that's kind of this interface you see on the left-hand side here. So this is where you can look at, how past due are your client invoices, and when are they coming due, and clients you need to get a hold of, or customers you need to get a hold of because they're so far past due. You can make notes, you can all that good stuff out there. So it's for your collection teams and your AR teams. The right-hand side, this is a customer-facing portal where your customers can log on, look at their invoices, make payments online, all that kind of stuff. So it's a back-end side and a customer-facing side as well. So that is it for the presentation on the PowerPoint. So we're going to jump into the demo here. I have Sage Intacct running. So this is what my Sage Intacct looks like when I log in. I have mine set to go to a dashboard by default. You can have your initial load screen be whatever you want it to be. Inside of Intacct, I mentioned how there's a top level that sits above all your companies. So this individual company, ABC company, has 3 entities or companies. There's a 100 USA 1, 200 USA 2, 300 USA 3. Okay. I'm sitting in the top level by default. So when I put in a customer, a vendor, an item, things of that nature, it's shared across all these entities. I could go to a particular entity by just clicking on it, and you'll see it's going to open up another tab, and it's going to take me directly into that entity. I'm in USA 1, and you can see it's color-coded, so you can see the difference between them, and I'm only looking at data now inside of USA 1, for instance. Okay. I can transact in here. Most people, it's recommended that you kind of transact everything at the top level. You're not jumping around companies, and you just tag your transactions to your entities and your companies through the location dimension that we'll talk about. even though it's set up like that, you can restrict users to what entities or entity they can get into. So I'm going to go into admin users, and I'm going to bring up a user here called Lisa. I'm going to edit her, and I'm going to go to user entity. So you'll see Lisa is restricted to company 100. So she would not have access to 200 and 300, wouldn't even see them listed out here. Okay. She also would not have access to the top level because of this checkbox not being checked right here. So just wanted to show you how you could limit people down. If you want to have multiple screens or multiple features open up in Intacct, you can do that. You just right click up here on the tab and you say duplicate, and that just opens up another tab that you could then go in and start doing whatever you wanted to on that tab, and you can right click and duplicate as many times as you want. The way you move around inside of Intacct is through the drop down here. You have a series of modules. You can move these modules into whatever order you wanted them to be. So if I wanted to move projects down a little bit, I can just drag and drop it right there, and it moves it for me. And that's all user driven. I have the ability, if I go into, let's say, accounts receivable, and I go into receive payments regularly, I can hover over an item and I could click on this star right here, and notice that will turn yellow, just like my customers. And what I'm doing there is I'm favoring that item. I can access my favorites by this star right here, so I can quickly get into anything that I have set up a favorite for right from my favorites menu. Okay. Users will only see the modules and the menu options that they have the ability to access. So they won't have to, if you got somebody who only has a few things they can get into, they don't have to go through all these menu options to get to those. They'll just see the features that they can get into. I want to show you the help inside the system here real quick. It's got a very good help system built right into it. So I'm going to go into a vendor. And we're going to come back to vendors here in a little bit, but I'm going to go into a vendor because I want to launch the help on this screen. So you'll notice on the vendor screen, there's a lot of data, a lot of tabs with a lot of fields across all these, right? And you might be wondering, what do all those fields mean? Well, on any screen inside of Intacct, you can go up to the help and support and go to help on this page. And then it'll take you to the help specifically about that page. And I could go right and say, okay, creating a vendor, what does that mean? And it walks me through tab by tab and field by field what everything is on that screen or screens, so I know exactly what everything is. So very robust help system built in to help you, kind of answer a lot of the questions yourself as you're looking at certain things. There are related topics you can click on based on what you're in. So a really good help system out there. Let's talk about dimensions. So as I mentioned, dimensions replace your sub accounts. So I can get to dimensions a couple ways. I can go to company, setup, cross company dimensions here, or I can go to reports, dimensions, and access them here as well. So I'm going to go into departments first. So in this company, they have a series of departments out here. So there's 100 sales, 200 operation, all the way down through 500, 550, 575. When you set these up, it's just like setting up a sub account. You give it your code, a description of it, and you tell it whether it's active or not. Okay, and we're going to talk about this bottom part here in a minute, because this is built-in functionality, but this bottom stuff doesn't show up unless you turn it on. So I want to come back to that. You can also, let me close out of here and let me go to another dimension called class. You can do parenting of your dimensions as well. So notice on my classes, I have the 100 residential, 200 commercial, 300 retail, 400 industrial. And notice the industrial has child classes underneath of it. So I do that by, I made 400 be a active, non-posting dimension. So I'm not going to see that on my list of dimensions to post to, but I made 405 through 425. When I set them up, I told it that the parent of that was 400 industrial. So what happens now is as I tag transactions to either 405, 410, 415, or 425, it's going to those individual classes, but I can also run a report or look at a dashboard or anything where I say, give me dimension 400, and all of these will roll up into that 400 class. And I could also individually report off of any of these as well. So you can control your hierarchy however you want. Okay, let's say that you don't call one of your dimensions class, for instance. Let's say you call it, it's your services that you provide. You can change the terminology inside of Intacct through the terminology option right here. And I find that, whichever field I want to change. So vendors, if you call them clients, or not vendors, customers, if you call them clients, for instance, you could change that. But I want to come to my class, and I'm going to say United States, because it is multi-language as well. I want to say class for I want to say service for singular and services plural. And I'm going to save this. It's going to take a minute to save because it's going through and making this change all the way throughout the system. I'm going to refresh my menu here. And now watch when I go to company, cross-company dimensions, instead of saying classes now, that says services because I changed that. Not only does it change it there, you're going to see in all the entry screens that we're coming up on here in a little bit, it's going to change it through there as well. So let me jump into dashboards here a little bit. So dashboards. I'm going to go into one here called Dimensional Insights. So you have a series of dashboards that come with the system. You can create your own and you can modify these. I can click on this plus sign on the dashboard and it lets me add different widgets to the dashboard. I can pick the component I want and then I fill in the information about that and I tell it where to put it at on here and it adds that to my dashboard. Your dashboards can be, they could have performance cards on it, like this is revenue surveillance, revenue entry, revenue accessories, and then revenue total. They could be reports like this revenue trend by active customers. You can color code things. Green, positive, red, negative. The darker it is green, the more positive. The darker it is red, the more negative. You could have graphs and charts and all this good stuff out here. Not only is it just dashboard related data, if I want to know so I am up 54.29% on revenue surveillance over last month. Well, what is all that $941,000? I can click on that and I can see month to date compared to last month. There's my $941,800. Well, what makes that up? Let me click on it again. And I go to the underlying transactions for all the accounts that roll up into that grouping. And if I want to know what made up this $230,000 right here, I can click on that. And it's going to take me to the underlying transactions out there and show me the posting that was made. And it tells me this came from a sales invoice inventory. And I'll click on that. And there was one invoice in there to big red box retail. I can click on that invoice and I can look at the actual invoice right there and what all was on there. Just from a high level dashboard, I was able to drill all the way down to an individual transaction. So very powerful dashboards for you to analyze your data. You can use your dimensions up here. So I have no dimensional turned on right now. If I want to say, just show me for company 100 USA 1, and I apply that, it's going to filter this data for me for just the 100 company. Or if I want to look at just 200, I can do that and say apply. And now I'm looking at the data for just the 200 company. I can say, show me 200 company for 200 operations and do things like that. So you can see how you can slice and dice your data using these dimensions up here. All right, let me talk about another one. There's also role-based dashboards that you can create. So I'm going to show you one for a CFO here. So this is more higher level type dashboarding. So company performance across the last 12 periods. What's the revenue? What's the cost of goods sold? What's the operating expenses? And what's the net income or loss? I can drill on that and look at the detail of all that. And just like we saw before, I can drill down and keep drilling down and keep drilling down to the underlying data if I wanted to. So from any of these screens, I can drill down. Dashboards role-based. They could also not be role-based. You can control what's on them. You can restrict who can see them, who can't. Your entities are your companies. They're set up out here underneath of entities. So here's our companies, 100, 200, 300. You set them up. There's your federal IDs. What color you want them to be, who's responsible for that company if you have somebody, what the first month of the fiscal calendar is, what the first tax month is. So all that's out there. So you have all that available to you. That's where you set them up. And then underneath of enter entity account mapping, this is where you set up your relationship between all your companies with your due tos and due froms between those companies. And we're going to see all that in action here in a little bit. General ledger, I'm going to go to my accounts. And I can, search on any of these columns right here. I can start typing in like checking. And it's going to filter anything where it starts with the word checking. I can also use this percent sign if I want to look at the word expense. And I want it to look in this field for anywhere where expense is, anywhere in that description. And you'll see it pulls a bunch of them here. I'm going to look at the rent one here for a minute. Okay, on the rent one, you can turn on whether certain dimensions are required or not, and that makes you have to put something in that dimensional value or that dimensional field for anytime you use this account, if you check that box. You also have the ability of doing some restrictions down here if you turn this feature on. So for rent, I'm restricting that down to the 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, and 550 departments. There was also a 575. So I'm saying 575 cannot be used as a valid department for rent. Okay. You can also, underneath of those dimensions, so if I go out to my departments and look at like 575, I'll see that same list of accounts populate out here, and notice rent doesn't show up. So that again is showing you where you can put restrictions on either the accounts or the dimensions to start doing some of your locking down of certain things. There's the ability, we talked about chart of accounts. You can also do statistical accounts for head count, number of X, number of Y, things that you want to track that aren't financial in nature, but you want to use on your chart of accounts, or on your financial reports. Budgets are available. So underneath the budget repository, you can create budgets out here. So I want to go to budget details on the current, and then by account, by each, your dimension combinations, you can set up your budgets out here in your budgeted numbers. Okay, so budgets are available. Let's make a journal entry so I can show you the intercompany in process. So let's say we got a journal entry from, let me bring this over here because I want to use this. We got a journal entry from our payroll provider, okay? And I want to enter that in. So I'm going to go out here and hold on this side and get this loaded up here. Okay, so I'm going to go to journal entries, and I'm going to do this for my payroll journal. I'm going to view transactions, and I'm going to add a journal entry. Today's date's fine. I could do a reversing entry if I wanted to. And I want to say this is my payroll journal for 5/22/25, for instance. All right. And I'm going to hit my account. I want to say that the source entity is 100. This is where it's being driven from. That's where the cash came from, let's say. And I want to say, I want to hit one of my expense accounts here for my labor. And that's going to go to the 100 USA, 100 sales department. So see, I'm just tagging my transactions here. And it's going to go to the service for residential, and it's $1,000. I can see additional data here. If I don't own the projects module and I don't want that to show up on the main line, I can go out here to more actions and edit this layout. And I can grab projects and I can drag that down to the secondary screen here and save the layout. So I can control the layout. So now projects is no longer up top. So let me keep going here. I'm just going to put a couple lines in here. This is going to go to the 200 company, and it's going to go to the 200 operations, and it's going to go to the commercial service, and it's for $1,500. Okay. And then I want to hit my cash account, and that's coming out of 100. And I'm not hitting any other dimensions on there, and it's credit of 2,500 bucks. Notice there's no save button, it's post. So it posted real time out there. And I'm going to go back in and look at this, and you'll notice what it did. Here's the entry I made, correct? But look what it did down here. It created my intercompany. So due to company 100, 1,500 bucks, due from company 200, $1,500 for this intercompany line right here to $1,500. One thing I meant to show you is if you have like supporting documentation for a transaction, like let's say you got a spreadsheet or a PDF or something from your payroll provider, you can drag and drop that right into your attachments here, and it will save that with the transaction that you can look at it anytime later when you're on that transaction. Okay. Let's see. You can also import in journal entries. So if you want to bring in an entry in, so I'm going to go out here to import transactions. I'm going to browse down to where I have my file. So I have this file here for prepaid insurance expense. So it looks like this right here. So it looks like that right there. All right, so I have the ability of bringing that in. I have a template out there, and I'm going to go ahead and say import. Assuming that I get no errors, it will come up with, yep, tell me it was successful. If I get errors, it'll give me ability to download an error file, and it'll give me an email telling me what the errors were. But I want to say done. I know that brought that into the GL or the GJ journal. So right here it is, expense of prepay insurance. It's still 5/21 because I forgot to change the date here. So it's getting the 5/21 from right there. But if I look at that, you're going to see it brought it in with the appropriate accounts that I told it to. So you have the ability of importing in journal entries. There are the ability of doing recurring journal entries out here if you have the recurring journal entry need. So if I want to schedule my prepay insurance to happen at a certain time, I come into my recurring journal entries, I make my entry of what it wants to look like here, and then on my schedule I say when it's going to happen, how often, things of that nature, and then it creates a schedule for that. And then based on the schedule, when it's ready to run, it'll run just after midnight on the day it's supposed to, or the days it's supposed to, based on the time zone that you're in. There is a built-in financial report writer. So I'm going to go into financial reports, and I'm going to bring up the profit and loss. The GL profit and loss. Let's see, I want the actual versus budget. Where's it at here? Let's see, P&L, actual versus budget. I'm going to go into here. So this is your financial report writer. You give it your name and information up here up front. You identify the rows you want on your report and the details behind them through here. On the columns, you tell it what columns of data you want. So here's your descriptions. Here's my actual data for the current month. Here's my budget data for the current month. I can do budget differences. I can do budget variance columns for percentages. I can do actual columns for the prior year for the current month. And I can do period differences, which will take the difference between the actual current month and the actual prior month. So these are all just columns that I'm setting up out there. You can do computations. You can do filtering if you want to filter this down by certain companies or departments or any of your dash or your dimensions out here. You can filter this by. But I'm going to leave it how it is, and I'm going to export this out to HTML. Here's my report. And then from here, I have the ability of drilling down to the underlying data if I wanted to see data out there. So let me go to actual data for revenue surveillance, like we saw before. Here's all the transactions, and I can keep drilling down from there, just like I could on my dashboards. I also have the ability to export this out to a PDF, or I can export it out right out to Excel as well. Okay, so that exported it out to Excel, and it looks like that when it exports it out. And you have control over that. You can modify the built-in reports. You can write your own, all right here from this financial report writer. Accounts payable, vendors. You know, we were in here briefly before, but I'm going to go into a vendor here, RWS. So, you know, you have your vendor tab here, which has all your kind of like your main address and constant data information. On the additional tab, you have things like, is the vendor on hold? What the default GL account is for AP bills. You could put attachments. Like I said, you can put attachments all over the place inside of Intacct, but you could put attachments here. And this is like a sample rental lease agreement for this vendor. You can attach that right there so people can look at it if need be. Your contacts go in your contact list. This is on the payment information is how do they prefer to be paid, what the terms code is, things of that nature are the main things on there. If they're ACH company, you turn it on here and you set up their ACH information. Restrictions. If you remember, I said earlier, you can restrict customers, vendors, things like that down by company if you wanted to, and not just make it be available for everything. You do that by saying restrict the vendor, and you pick what entity or locations it's available for, and same thing with departments. So that's how you do your restrictions there. Let's see. There's this, I mentioned about a collaborate tool earlier. So there's this collaborate tool down bottom where you can make notes. So I made a note the other day. It said, hey, I talked to Tom today. He's leaving the company on 5/31/25. And I could say, you know, hey, thanks for the update. So it's just a communication tool, and it's on whatever record you're on. That collaborate stays on there. Everybody sees it. Everybody sees the messages. Just a way of communicating on records. You can also see a summary of all that stuff up here at top when new ones come in. So you're not having to go to individual records. You can see what they were and go to it from here as well. Let's talk about AP bills here for a minute. I want to put a bill in. So I'm going to add a bill. And I want to say this is for today for the ABC Supply Company. If I had a supporting document for this bill, I can grab that and drag and drop that in the attachments. So let's say I had a PDF copy of that bill. I can attach that to it. So again, it sticks with that transaction, can be looked at any point in time later on. I'm going to say it's going to office supplies for $500. And this is going into the 100 company, into the 550. See how I see 500, 550, and 575? Remember that here in a minute. And then I'm going to go into the residential service. Okay, now I want to pick another line here, and I'm going to go into the trade show expense. Okay, and this is going to be for $250. And this is for the 100 location. I click on the drop down. Notice 550 and 575 do not show up. That's getting into those restrictions that we were talking about earlier. So I cannot pick those for this. So just showing you how that works. And then I want to pick admin here. And then I'm all good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and say, I can save this as a draft if I didn't want it to post right now. I can come back into it later. But I want to go ahead and say post. And it posts that transaction for me. And I would see it as an open invoice now on that vendor. I see the GL postings out there, everything. AP automation. If you have a file that you want to import in or a series of files, So I have this sample bill here for Office Depot. Okay. So you see it's Office Depot. It's June 4th, 2018 is the date. Here's the invoice number. Here's the lines and the amounts, all that good stuff. I can come out here and say import, choose a file. I can browse to that PDF we just looked at, and I can say import. Oh, hold on. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Hold on. Oh, I went to the wrong one. That's trying to import in something else. I'm sorry. I meant to go to I went to import. I meant to go to upload here. Okay. I'm going to drag and drop that. Sorry, I went to the wrong button. I'm going to drag and drop. That's how you bring in a list of invoices from a file. I drag and drop that PDF out here and basically said, bring this in. And I want to say create bills. All right, let me refresh my screen and you're going to see the line up top. Notice it's now a blank line that says analyzing. So what it's doing now is it's analyzing those files that I just said to upload there, and it's trying to create a bill from that. So machine language is kicking in. Over time, it's going to manually learn from your missing data like we talked about. It'll attach the PDF to it. It'll put it out there in draft mode by default, and you'll know that it was uploaded because there'll be a source of upload here. And you can set this up to monitor directories if you wanted to pull stuff in automatically. You have the ability of doing recurring AP invoices or bills just like you could recurring GL. Okay, last thing I want to show is I want to show the approval processes here. And we'll come back and maybe try and revisit this to see if it ends up creating it. It's going to take a while because it's just starting to learn it right now. But let me go ahead and duplicate a tab here. So I turned on the approval processing for this company uses PO requisitions, where employees put in PO requisitions. It then has to route to somebody or multiple people to be approved before it can be turned into a purchase order. So let me show that to you. So I'm going to come out here and go to Applications, Purchasing, Quote, Purchase Requisition, and I'm going to add a PO requisition, and I'm going to do this for the ABC Supply Company. Okay. It brings all the information in from the vendor. I have the ability to, if I have like a PO requisition form, I can drag and drop that on here. Okay, so just like we saw before, the PO rec form is now attached to this transaction. And I just put in the lines of what I'm requesting. So I come down to my lines here and I say this is 60340. It's for office supplies. It's for the 100 entity. It is for the 300 admin department, and it's for the service of 300 retail, and it's for $500. Okay, I want to keep it simple here. Notice this is a submit button, not a post button. So I'm going to submit that. Okay, and notice that the state of this transaction is submitted. Okay, so now it's going to route accordingly based on my routing rules. So I have a guy, John Approver, who's the one who's going to look at these. So John Approver would have got an email that said, hey, John, you have this PO requisition out here for this vendor for this amount that you need to look at. I can click on that link to get right into Intacct, or I can already be logged in. So I want to drag over. Notice I'm logged in as Joe Gupser here. I'm going to drag this over here. And notice I'm logged in as John Approver right here. So John Approver can now look at these, look at this information out here. So I can see it. I can add this to dashboards. So if I go to dashboards and go to role-based and go to controller, you're going to see I put this widget out here that shows me all the approvals that are required for this user. So here's bills that he has to look at. Here's purchasing transactions he has to look at, expense reports, timesheets. Click on the magnifying glass here, and it takes me out to my approvals. Or I can access it from the menus of going accounts payable, bills, approve bills. And I can see the ones that are out here. So let's see. No, not bills, wrong one. I'm going to go to purchasing. I went into bills, not purchasing. I'm going to go to purchasing all, and I'm going to go into approved transactions. Yeah, there's the one I just put in. So ABC Company, $500. I could go out here and view this as part of my review process, see all the information about it, see where it was coded to. I could say, oh, there's an attachment on there. What does he have here? Okay, he's got this attachment showing me his requisition form that he filled out. So I can, as an approver, look through all that stuff. I can decline it. If I decline it, it goes back to the person who put it in with whatever note I said of why I'm declining it. You'll notice there's collaboration available anywhere throughout the system, like we talked about before. But let's say John Approver thinks this looks good. So I'm going to approve it, and I'm going to say this is approved, and I'm going to say approve. You're going to notice it drops off of the approval list for John Approver because he has no more requisitions to approve right now. So let me move that back over. It's going to, so now that's going to kick off an email if I set it up to do that back to Joe Gupser saying, hey, Joe, this requisition that you submitted has now been approved. So I know without having to keep refreshing my screen, did it get approved or not? I'm going to refresh this screen. Notice how it still has the state of submitted because we haven't refreshed the screen yet. So if I would have went out and come back in or whatever, it is now going to say pending. And I can go into this PO requisition now and look at it and go to the history and see that, oh, it was approved by John on this date at this time. I can now, as a user, if I have the rights, go out and say, convert this to a purchase order and say post. And what that now did is that now took this PO requisition where it said pending, it now says converted. And if I go out to purchasing order, purchase order, right from in here, I can go out here and view and edit this. And I can see here's the attachment still. I can go to the history, saw that it was approved from a purchase rec to a PO. And then the last thing I want to show you is you can print or email from here. So let me print this and show you what the form looks like out of the box. And you can, this can be, modified some here. That's what the form looks like. Or I can email this to my vendor as well. So I'm going to uncheck print and say email. And I'm going to send this to my Gmail account here. So it's coming from a different user. Let me just get this all out of here. I don't need all this stuff. Okay, from Joe Gupser, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's going to attach it. I want to say okay. And then while that's doing that, let me do one thing on this side here. I'm going to log into my Gmail. Okay, let me go into my Gmail here. And you're going to see here is the email that it sent. Hey, vendor, here's a PDF or a PO. And right from there, you can email out the form. Okay. And as I mentioned before, those workflows work throughout the system and all the ones that we've talked about, journal entries, AP bills on down the line. And that's kind of what I had for what I wanted to cover today. I know that was a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time. I don't know if we had any questions. Do we have any questions or anything, Brett?
Yeah, so there's two. One is what is a standard implementation timeframe?
Okay, good question. It depends on a couple different things. There's different factors that drive that. There are factors like how many companies you have, what modules you're using, how many users you have. But in the typical implementation, it's anywhere from 3 or 4 months up to 6 to 9 months, and it just depends again on all those factors. Will determine how long your implementation is going to be. And it also determines on how much commitment that the person, like the end user can provide for testing and all that stuff as we're going through and providing the information that we need maybe and whatnot. But the group that's on here with you guys all being on Sage 100 and really we kind of work with all you guys, we would be able to get kind of data easier out of your system. So that would help with the implementation process.
And then on that note, I had someone email me directly during the presentation, so I'll go ahead and handle it and just reiterate what I was saying there. And it's very similar to what you just alluded to, Joe. The question was basically, is this a complicated transition process to get from one system to the other because it's in the Sage family? In one aspect, it is like going to be converting from one ERP to any other ERP. However, because we are your reseller, we know your data, and we've done this before. We do have Sage 100 export and Intacct import templates that we use to massively cut down on the data conversion time. So yeah, in some aspects, it is like converting from one to the other, but because you're dealing with us, and again, we know your data, and we know how to get data in and out of both systems really well. We can cut down a lot on that time.
Agreed. Yep, absolutely. Yep. Okay. Well, again, I want to thank everybody for attending. If you have any questions that you think about, later today, tomorrow, next week, next month, whatever, don't hesitate to reach out. Again, here's the email addresses for myself and Brett. That's the Cincinnati at martinandassociates.com is the overall email address that Betsy from our office clears and routes accordingly. But if you don't work with myself or Brett on a day-to-day basis, and you work with somebody else and you're more comfortable reaching out with them first, just reach out to them and we can review anything, discuss anything further. I know that was a short amount of time to show you a lot of data. So if there was things that kind of pique your interest in that and you want to explore further, let us know. We can schedule some one-on-one follow-ups that kind of dive into more detail on some of the topics we talked about, or even some that we didn't talk about, because there's a lot of things that we couldn't touch base on just a 1 hour demo. So again, I want to thank
before you jump off, someone did just ask the question, will the slides be available? Certainly we can make the PDF available for you as well. And I do want to just kind of plug, we've been sort of wrapping up a large series of Intacct webinars on a whole host of different topics, a lot that we covered today. So I know Joe talked about dimension structures, the financial report writer, approvals, there's bank feeds. So there's a whole host of webinars that we've done historically too. Those are of course available for you to peruse and watch at your own pace.
Yeah, so like Brett mentioned, we did a whole webinar on just dimensions and dashboards and reporting, and where we dove just a whole webinar devoted to that. We did one based on workflow approvals. We did one based on AP automation and bank feeds. We did one on the financial report writer. So that's a good point, Brett. As he was mentioning, we have webinars on that as well. If you say, hey, I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, you have something I could watch, we can send you the link to those webinars as well. And they're also out on our website as well. But you can watch those, because we went into a lot more depth in those webinars on those particular topics. So good point.
I can include the link to all of those in the follow-up email.
Cool. Thanks, Betsy. Yeah. So, but the follow-up email you'll get will have a link to all those, not just only a link to the one that we're doing. It'll be a link to all those. And then to answer the thing about the PowerPoint, we can make it be available, but it'll also be a part of the presentation as well. Like but it'll be part of the video, not the individual PowerPoint on that point. But yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I guess if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up here. Again, I want to thank you guys all for taking the time out to learn a bit more about Sage Intacct, and look forward to hopefully talking to some of you guys a little bit further and diving a little more into some of the topics there. Everybody have a great day and a great holiday weekend coming up, and look to talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.